Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Borofsky, welcome. Thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you.
You've made the news with $23.7 trillion pronouncement in your report. I'd like to ask you to unpack that further. That clearly, obviously, is the fullness of potential of taxpayer liability, the exposure, potential exposure to taxpayer liability. Many of us have been operating off a working assumption that total taxpayer liability was about $12 trillion, that between the Fed and the FDIC as well as the Treasury Department totaled about 12 trillion. Now, the other number that I thought was significant that you said was about 4 trillion of that is actual realized expenditures. So two questions, and let's just try to break this down into categories that are manageable. Tell the American people where that taxpayer liability is located, to whom it is, to whom it has been gifted, basically, and then again under the $4 billion actual realized expenditures, to whom is that going and in what form? Direct expenditures, loans, guarantees, by whom, to whom?
Your question actually encapsulates why we made this an entire section of our report, because it's obviously some very, very complicated issues here. And in Section 3 of this report, we do that breakdown. We talk about each of the numbers that we're talking about, the $3 trillion that's currently outstanding, the $4.7 trillion that has been expended or guaranteed in total, including money that's been paid back and canceled programs from the initiation of the crisis through June 30th, and then the $23.7 trillion number, which is the maximum number if every one of these programs was subscribed to the highest amount, every guarantee was done. And the purpose of this really wasn't to make the news or to make a splash. What we did here is we took the 50 programs, because we thought it was important to show what the 50 programs were, in addition to TARP, that address the government's support of the financial system. And really this $23.7 trillion, which has generated so much controversy and so much comment from the Treasury Department, is just adding up the number of what the total high water mark is for each of those 50 programs. And that's what's reflected in here. So it isn't that the taxpayer is on the hook right now for $23.7 trillion. We don't say that, and we don't suggest it. But that is the maximum if you take all of the programs that have been initiated since the inception of the financial crisis.
That's the total potential exposure. But again, let's get back. Let's try to frame that a little bit more concisely. This is 250 pages. The particular section you're referring to, I don't know how many pages is that. I don't know if you have a particular chart that, again, categorizes this in broad terms so that we can all have a working framework that is usable so that we can understand, again, the total liability that exists and actually where it's going.
Table 3.4 on page 138, and I would say that any taxpayer or anyone interested, this report is at our website, www.sigtarp.gov, where anyone can download this and see all the facts. But if you look at page 138, that has a table which is entitled Incremental Financial System Support. And what we've done here is we've taken, there's been some existing programs that were increased. So we haven't included the total program, but only the increase that is attributable to the financial crisis. And what we have here is it lists the different sources of where the guarantees or support are coming from, and lists what the current balance is, the maximum balance from inception, and what the total potential support is. And that's the phrase I think is the right one, is total potential support. Now, each of these entries in here, and we list the Federal Reserve, the FDIC, Treasury, TARP, Treasury non-TARP, and then others, is supported subsequently in the report by other charts. So, for example, if you wanted to see what the Federal Reserve portion of this is, you just turn the next page, and in Table 3.5, we list each of the Federal Reserve programs that's described, and again, with the same information, the current balance, the maximum balance, and the total support related to the crisis. And what you do when you add up each of these charts and the total support, that's where the $23.7 trillion number comes from.
Now, out of this, about $16 trillion is between the Federal Reserve, Treasury, and the FDIC. Again, the operating assumption that we've been working off of for basically the balance of this year, because there was no numbers available, easily available, was 12. And so that's a very significant increase.
And that's one of the reasons why we've done this. And we've come under some criticism for having done this, but every time that we would look at a different article or a different newspaper, there'd be a different number there. And we thought it was important to put the TARP in context to collect what the major numbers were. And that's what we've tried to do here.
What level of detail does it go into in terms of actual recipients of these various funds between FDIC, Treasury, as well as the Federal Reserve?
Well, we had a page limit, so and because ultimately this is TARP in context, and given the number of these programs, what we've done is really a 1 or 2 paragraph summary of each program. That further information, and also everything that's in here is based on publicly available information. This is all stuff that we got off the websites or congressional testimony of the different agencies. Getting into the recipients would be, I think in a large part would be, in many cases, beyond what's publicly available, and frankly, beyond our jurisdiction or authority, because these are non-TARP related.
The gentleman from Nebraska's time
Thank you,
has
Chair.
expired. Thank you.